I've worked freelance or been self-employed for a good part of my career. I'm still self-employed. I make YouTube videos. YouTube's not my employer. If anybody is, it's you watching me. And if you watch me and some ads, I get paid, which is wonderful. So I like being self-employed. I've always done, I haven't always, but I've at least half of my adult life been a gig worker, freelance, self-employed, independent contractor, whatever you want to call it. I've done it and I like it. It works well for me because I don't like being in an office or having to be somewhere at a certain time. I've done it, did it for years, never really enjoyed it. So if that's you, if you're also a self-employed person or a gig worker or do side hustles, whatever you want to call it, and you don't have a steady income like an employee would have, today I'm going to talk about how to budget for this type of work. I think if you are self-employed, we'll just call it self-employed. And I mean all the other things I talked about, whatever label you want to give it. But if you are not an employee, a W-2 employee, it means you are disciplined. You can, first of all, find work, then you can do the work, and if you keep doing it and getting paid, you do it well enough to actually get paid. So that's really good. Not everybody can do that. And I just wanted to talk very briefly about what a W-2 employee is and a 1099 independent contractor. A W-2 employee works for a company. They are an employee, they're on the payroll, they show up for work, whether remotely or in person, on a regular basis. They get paid, mostly they get benefits, usually, I shouldn't say mostly, they usually get benefits like paid time off. We used to call it sick leave and vacation leave, but now it's just PTO, paid time off. They get maybe the ability to invest in a retirement or whatever the company offers as far as a retirement plan. So there are some perks to being a W-2 employee who works for a company. And they get a paycheck every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever. So as an independent contractor, that was one of the titles I had when I was self-employed. And I worked at an office oftentimes for a company, but I was not an employee. I was an independent contractor. At the end of the year, I got a 1099, which is just a form that a company uses to report my income, the income they paid me, the company paid me, instead of a W-2. So my point to saying that if you are disciplined enough to get jobs as a side hustle or a gig worker or whatever, and you do them well enough to get recurring, customers, the same customer hires you again, or you can find new people and they hire you and they pay you, then you're probably, I think you are disciplined enough to budget for this kind of lifestyle. I know it was a difference when I started exclusively being self-employed as opposed to being an employee. So I'm going to talk about that today. The first thing I think you need to consider is what your expenses are. And this would include personal expenses and business expenses, because an employer, might provide your computer to use. And as a self-employed person, you probably have to provide your own computer. And if you already have one, that's great. But if you need to buy one, that's an expense, and you can write off a lot of these expenses. So knowing your expenses, personal and business, so that you know how much money you need is the first step to good budgeting. And that's the case for everybody, basically. And working to increase your income as needed is part of good budgeting to have enough to pay your bills every month. The second thing to consider is how much do you actually bring in? What is your income as a self-employed person? If you have somewhat steady work, this may be easy to figure, but if it's always fluctuating, keep track every month for at least 3 months and of all the income you have. And if it's even just, like a $20 thing here and there that you do a small job, count that. But keep track for at least 3 months and then average that amount. Take those 3 months, add them together, add the income, and then divide by 3 to get the average. And this is what you should use for your budgeting, because you might have a fabulous month, where you make thousands and thousands of dollars somehow. And then the next month it may be just 1,000. So, you can't really compare those apples to apples. You need to average this. And if you can do it for more than 3 months, get an average over 6 months, that's even better, because that might be more representative of your fluctuating income and what it really is at different times of the year. So use this average number instead of your best month, because it'd be great if you made the income that you do in your best month every month, but that usually isn't the case. I've been there, I understand. And speaking of your best month, use that time to sock away some money. Open a special savings account if you have to, that is just for emergencies, for maybe a month for when you don't have a huge income, because that comes up sometimes. I know I had times when I thought, oh no, when will I ever get more work? And 2 or 3 weeks would pass and I didn't have anything, any income. And it's a little scary. So having an emergency fund that you use when you need it, it's for an emergency, for when you don't have any income, is a huge relief. It lets you realize that you can do this. There will be down times, maybe in the industry, or just for whatever reason, you don't have any work to do, so you don't get paid. But having that buffer is huge. It's so important, and it helps you keep being self-employed. Having the buffer will also help you not have to use credit so much. It's great to have credit cards to use in an emergency if you can pay them off pretty quickly. But otherwise, you're going to be paying interest that's really oftentimes very high, and then it defeats the purpose of, trying to budget easily. So if you have a buffer, a little emergency fund for those lean months, that's the way to go. What I'd like to talk about next are fixed expenses. We all have to live somewhere. We all have to eat. We need a way to get places. You might have a car. You might take public transportation. You might walk, which is very cost effective. And we all have utilities like water, electricity, internet, things that we really do need to be able to live. So these are fixed expenses that you really should pay first before you go out to eat, before you, go buy new clothes or whatever it is. Make sure those fixed expenses are taken care of, and then consider some little luxuries or, extras after you've taken care of the necessities. And the next category I think to consider is sort of like another emergency fund, but it's more for big ticket items that are going to come up. There are expenses like maybe car repairs or vacations, just things that you don't have that expense every month, but maybe insurance if you pay it every 6 months or something. You need to have that little nest egg so that when those bills come due, or when you are planning to take a trip or something, you can pay those. It will make your life so much easier if you, are realistic about what you actually spend and save for those items before you just go blow your whole paycheck. It's not really a paycheck. It's more like a funds for services rendered. So for these irregular costs, it's good to have a buffer or a little emergency fund so that whenever they come due, and they will, we all have things. I just bought new tires for my car. That isn't something I do every month, but it is something, and I hadn't bought new tires in 6 years, so I thought it was time. It's something we have to do from time to time. If you own a vehicle, those kind of repairs or costs should be accounted for. They're not regular, but they are expenses that we have, and it's a good idea to have the money saved for when that comes up. And my last point is, I think it's good, whether you are self-employed or an employee of a company, whatever your situation is, to live below your means. I have done this pretty much my whole life. I never spend money I don't have. I've had credit card debt occasionally for certain items, and then I try to, pay it off within 6 months. I pay off my credit cards every month now because I'm able to, but I know sometimes we're not in the position to be able to do that. But living below your means, being realistic about what money you have and not overspending is huge. That is your best budgeting tip, I think, that you could enact. For instance, if you go grocery shopping once a week, you bring home all those groceries, you put them away, and then you eat them throughout the week. So, as a self-employed person, that's kind of how I think we should treat our income. Just because we get this, check or this payment, we don't go blow it all at once. We dole it out for our fixed expenses. We save some for, an emergency fund for when we're not getting as much work and we need to use it to live. Or save, and also, I should say, also save some for these large items like my tires. That was a little over $500. And I had the savings, so I'm good. But having lived as long as I have, I know these kind of things come up. It's not a monthly expense, but it is an expense that comes up occasionally. Very rarely. It's not like I have that kind of big expense every month, but when I do, it's a great feeling to know I can put it on my credit card and pay it off when that's due. It's really good. It's a good feeling. I think instead of rewarding ourselves with going out to eat, for instance, or buying something that you've been wanting but don't really need, reward yourself in some intangible way. Get together with some friends, have them over for a meal that you prepare that's a fraction of the cost of everybody going out to eat. Take a walk. Go drive your car to a place that you love to visit and walk around or hike or whatever it is you enjoy doing. Because seriously, the things we buy don't last oftentimes, but experiences and just having a good time, whatever that means to you, makes us feel better, and it helps us recharge so that we can work. We don't want to work all the time. It's a good idea to take a break. And if you're new here today, I'm Do It Myself Peg. Here on my YouTube channel, I talk about frugal living and other things. And if you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like and subscribing if you haven't already to my channel. I really appreciate everybody who comes by and listens to me. It's still pretty shocking. So, thank you. And I will see you next time.